Coming up on Mountain Hermeneutics, alcohol, cigars, drugs, vices. Should Christians partake in these things? We'll get into it. Let's keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
But what is faith? Find out exclusively here at Mount Hermeneutics. Nowhere else. If anyone else who tells you what faith is, they're full of crap. Listen to us.
Very well.
Yes, I'm quite proud of myself, if you can't tell.
I feel like you overpromised a bit, but
Fellas, what's happening?
it's gonna be
Yo.
a damn good show.
Damn good show.
We
Man,
going
good
off the
show.
reservations today. What is alcoholic beverages?
Hey, we're still on a hangover from our anniversary party, so we're on a bender.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's right. I had to.
He's kidding, everyone. We're teetotalers. Oh, you and Carrie's anniversary party.
No, I'm talking about our anniversary.
Our
Oh,
1
okay.
year as a show, as Mount
Right.
Hermeneutics. This guy.
I thought that's what you meant, but then I'm like,
how do we even
but I
keep this
didn't-
guy? Like, what
I
is
No, our anniversary is next month.
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
I heard that, Dre.
I mean,
Rude.
there's plenty of answers. I mean, I asked the question. There's good answers, and there's also bad answers in the chat or in the comments. Right, bad answers only on why we keep Brian.
Bad answers only. I like
bad
that.
answers only.
I don't need that in my life, man.
Come on, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be
Got
fun.
enough going
Where
on.
y'all at? Come on, comments. We need some responses. Why do we keep Brian around? Bad answers only. I like it.
Wrong answers only.
I'm for my mental health reasons. I'm not going to read them.
You're gonna avoid the comments
I'm
now.
sure you guys will just make some. I'm sure whatever I hear from you is going to be worse than what's actually there. So I guess I should check. Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about?
So what's happening with you guys?
Nothing really big going on here. I think Carrie's about to go out of town on Bachelor for like 2 weeks. She's going to be she's going to college. she's going to some it's like a veteran leadership college thing where they do like a 2-week sabbatical. So
Your mom goes to college.
Nice.
Sorry.
that was a nice Gen X
I had
response that apropos to nothing. I like it.
I packed a bag and put it in the car because in the morning, Milani and I are driving to Eugene, Oregon to watch our son, compete in the national U.S. Olympic trials.
Nice. That's awesome, dude.
So pretty cool.
Super
Actually,
cool.
today NBC put out an advertisement and put him in the top 10 of the fastest sprinters in the U.S. who will be competing at this thing. So it's kind of cool. So it's not just me putting out Cooper propaganda. It's now NBC. So that's pretty fun.
Well, it's nice of them to put it out since he's number 8, huh?
Right. Yeah. About time.
That's awesome, dude. We're
Yes,
we're
congrats,
obviously
man.
the whole hermeneutics family is pulling for him.
Oh, right. Oh, so alcohol.
Yeah.
A
You know,
sin.
I've been in a handful of conversations online, which I think feeds into this directly. And I find it really interesting, the amount of people that will go through massive mental gymnastics to prove a point, right? So somebody in one of the Facebook groups, whatever, they asked the question about, wine, just wine specifically, because obviously wine was, biblical, talked about it. Jesus turned water into wine, all these kind of things, right? Well, they have this, and Brian, actually, you've talked about this specifically, but there's a Christian theory, it's probably teetotaler, And for those that don't know what that phrase means, it's somebody that's like abstains from everything 100%.
Typically applied to alcohol, but
Yeah.
but it's, it can be generalized.
But they try to justify that the wine that's talked about in the Bible when it relates to Jesus was young wine, which is to imply that it wasn't fully fermented, therefore low point. And then there's an entire set of
it was Welch's. Like
they try to say that it was only like 3 to 5% alcohol. And then there's this whole like sub world that I fell into this like 2-day long rabbit hole of reading about, where people like really have this entire belief system built around the idea that there was young wine that wasn't as alcoholic, and that's the kind that they were talking about, and that Jesus only consumed wine that he transfigured, if you will, from water, that he never drinks someone else's wine. Anyway, that was a really interesting kind of starting point to this conversation, I thought.
Wasn't it at a wedding?
Yes.
Didn't the mother's like, hey, we're
like,
out
we
of
screwed
booze.
up. We're out of wine. Like, we got a problem. Can anybody, like, we don't know what to do. And he's like, I got this. Yeah.
At first he's like, why you bothering me with this woman? And then he like, oh, okay, mom. Sorry, mom. I'll do this.
Yeah, I generally don't even get into those debates with people, because I don't think they're having them in good faith. I think they're just kind of making the Bible say what they want it to, because there's absolutely there's no basis for that. I mean, it's possible that some of the wine he drank was low point. There's no particular reason from the text to think that. There's not a single textual clue that would lead us to believe that. It's just that they've made up their mind that alcohol is sinful, and so their scheme of what's right and wrong, what's acceptable to God, and what God cares about and what he doesn't, it's just geared to that. So they
Matt, did they quote anything? Did they create a line from here to there, even if it's squiggly?
No, it's I mean, it's largely, eisegesis, right? It's just
okay.
It's just people, like Brian said, trying to take their concepts and then forcing it into the text, right? Because it's really important to them that they pull this out of the text. But I always ask the question, the company Welch's, as an example, was founded in 1869. What were they using for communion before 1869? Right? Like, was every church pressing grapes in real time and just fresh grape juice? Because I've never made grape juice before. I don't know if you guys have. I've made orange juice before. I've squeezed a couple of oranges and, some fresh orange juice, and like, wow, that is actually really good. It tastes a lot better than regular orange juice.
But so what's the difference between grape juice and water?
Flavor and sugar.
Between grape juice
I know
and water.
the difference between drinking grape juice and drinking water, but what is the significance of doing communion using water vice grape juice?
Well, I think
thanks for making me clarify.
I didn't understand the question, man.
I didn't understand it either.
God.
I mean, I can't help but think that the significance was the color, right? Like in at the Last Supper, when Christ was saying, hey, when you drink this, you're drinking my blood, because it looked like blood, right? Like, it's like, it wasn't water. If he'd been like, this is my blood, people like, dude, no wonder this is the Last Supper, because your blood is translucent. That's not good. Right.
Bro, if I saw somebody with some Welch's color, some Concord grape blood, I would think that he was an Anunnaki. That's all. That's what I'm saying. Definitely a Nephilim, and we should destroy him immediately.
I mean, I guess there's a fair point to say that the wine they were drinking could have been more of a Pinot, rosé color that was more genuinely blood color than a dark red wine, right? I mean, I don't know.
But what's the significance of the ritual itself?
Of communion?
Sure.
Well, that's a different.
And why it is a different topic, but why couldn't water suffice for that? For the ritual, since you're just replaying it, you're not actually doing it, right? So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think what Matt said is it to symbolize wine, it has to bear some to symbolize blood, it has to bear some resemblance to blood. Like
Okay.
I don't think anybody would use a white wine to for communion. It would just, it would just ruin it. But
Ruin it. Okay.
well,
Well,
it would ruin the symbolism. But
yeah, I think it was just symbolic because of the color. There's a different conversation here, though, right? So we all come from a heavy naval tradition, right?
very rough.
It's common knowledge that in the 14, 15, 1600s, when sailors were out sailing, that they had supply stores they had supply storage in their ships for water and rum, and the water would go bad. It would get stagnant from bacteria, and it's just sitting there because they didn't have sanitary storage capabilities, but the rum didn't. And so more often than not, when ships, I forget where I read this, I was reading a report, a paper about this, but the ships would come in and they would kind of have the ship came back with this much food on board, this much water, this much rum. Their rum stores were always empty, and their water was always only about half drink, but it was undrinkable by the time the ship returned. And so there's a lot to be said for the purpose behind drinking a fermented drink that's above and beyond the alcoholic consumption concept behind it, right? Fermented fluids transport. This is before refrigeration. This is for pasteurization, right? Like there were genuine health concerns with trying to transport water. That's why the Romans and the aqueducts was such a big thing. The ability to move water cleanly over massive distances, it was because of the motion, right? Once you put it into a bladder and then carry it around, it's got bacteria in there and it's going to go bad. But the fermented drink didn't. And so wine had a use above and beyond why we drink wine today. And I think that has a lot to do with why it's so talked about in those times, because they learned about dysentery the hard way.
Same as like cured meat too, right? Like lots of salty
100%.
before refrigeration.
Yeah.
I think that's incidental to their use of it, though. I mean,
I don't.
When you read how wine is discussed in the Bible, its celebratory purposes are front and center. Like throughout the Psalms and Ecclesiastes, it meant God is praised for giving wine to gladden the heart of man. There's a passage in Deuteronomy. I just had it up and I X'd out of it. So now
I like that about gladdening the heart. It's good.
Yeah.
So it's godly to drink wine and become glad.
Yeah, and in Deuteronomy 14, it reads, "Be sure to set aside a tenth of all your fields, of all that your fields produce each year. Eat the tithe of your grain, new wine, and olive oil, and the firstborn of your herds." In the presence of the Lord your God, at the place you would choose as a dwelling for his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. But if that place is too distant, you have been blessed by the Lord your God and cannot carry your tithe, because a place where the Lord will choose to put his name is so far away, then exchange your tithe for silver and take the silver with you and go to the place the Lord your God will choose. Use the silver to buy whatever you like, cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything you wish. Then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. And do not neglect the Levites. But yeah, so this is after they've traveled. They get to Jerusalem, to the temple to worship, and they use their money to buy alcohol there to celebrate.
Yeah.
And so the idea that drinking alcohol is intrinsically sinful. It's simply that is in violation of the scripture. They're calling something sinful that God instructed people to use for celebration.
Right. So then I guess then the follow-on challenge is how do we reconcile that with all of the, I'm trying to think of the right word, the warnings or the, cautionary tones against being drunk.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So was there an expectation, do we think, that we would understand the difference between drinking and being drunk?
Um,
Is there Old Testament passages about
Being
not being
drunk.
drunk? Because Paul's pretty clear on it a few times. Um,
yeah,
in Ephesians and Corinthians and Romans and Titus, talk about being a slave to wine and uh living honorably and for God, right?
yeah, and there's
Yeah, Dre, as far back as Deuteronomy. Just a quick, I just did a quick search. Just um,
I mean, there's even that story in Genesis with Lot and his daughters and him being
right,
drunk
but
and
that was more of a story, and we don't know, like,
right, right, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, but
well,
going back
I
Deuteronomy, Samuel, there's Kings. There's talks about being drunk and
Okay,
the problems with
yeah,
it. So
cool.
and Proverbs has a lot to say against drunkenness, and there's that passage in that you alluded to in 1 Corinthians 6 that I think deserves some attention here. Do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And that is what some of you were. But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God.
That's an interesting list of some immoral, vile stuff, and then included in there is drunkards, right? Like not just any sin, but you did all these things that are, you know, like against the Ten Commandments, and then we're gonna put drunkenness on top of this,
yeah,
like with that with adultering.
there's a
So
weird
being
one
in
in there's a weird one in Jeremiah. So 13:13. And it says, "Then tell them, this is what the Lord says. I'm going to fill with drunkenness all who live in this land, including the kings who sit on David's throne, the priests, the prophets, and all those living in Jerusalem." That's kind of odd also. Um, but yeah, you're right that it's an interesting thing to take from something that's seemingly so accepted, the behavior of drinking, and then put drunkenness in such a uh, contemptible and vile categorization. It's
well,
it's
yeah,
pretty
and
interesting.
the common denominator is just the broad distinction that the Bible makes between fallen sinful man and the people of God are it's the triumph of reason over appetite, so of spirit over flesh. Um, there's that passage I always quote from Second Peter where he talks about how his divine power has given us everything needed for life and godliness through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and excellence, that through these he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption of the world caused by appetites. The most translations render that the corruption of the world caused by evil desires or caused by lust, something like that. The actual Greek word there is epithumia, which just means appetite. And in Plato's Republic, maybe it was Symposium, I always get those confused, but he describes the components of the human person in terms of nous, or mind, thumos, which is passion, and then epithumos, which is appetite. And the reason I think that's important to point out is that I think translating it evil desires or lust, they're kind of adding value to something that it's on its own, it's morally neutral. Appetites are not evil in themselves. It's when we're mastered by them that they're evil.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they corrupt the world. And fallen man is described in terms of a beast, like a creature of instinct and appetite. Paul talked about them as their God is their stomach. The Christian life is a matter of reason triumphing over appetites and flesh, so that you can control yourself. You can subdue your appetites. That's why fasting is a spiritual discipline. You learn like it isn't evil to be hungry and want to eat. But if you can master your hunger and deny your impulses, then you're simply not growing spiritually if you're not learning how to do that. And so, the question about why is drunkenness there? Why, like, is it, I think that raises interesting questions about why that's bad, why that would
It's even more
disqualify
specific.
someone.
It's like a drunkard. So is there
Yeah.
a difference between drinking and being a drunkard, or being drunk twice, like, at some kind of celebratory thing, and then being drunk every day, right? Is that the definition of a drunkard? Somebody who's been drunk, or somebody who's drunk constantly and they can't really perform tasks?
That's a good question. And honestly, as somebody, you guys have known me for 30 years. I have a shameful tendency to overindulge. I found myself wondering, am I a drunkard? Am I disqualified from the kingdom of God because of the amount that I drink? And I'm very conscious of that as an issue. And I can kind of understand why some people would just prefer to just write it off. All drinking is bad. Don't drink at all. It's sinful. If you drink, you're out. But that's clearly not biblical. But if, for somebody who can't control their appetites, who can't resist it, that might not be a bad idea. It's wrong to decide that's the rule for everybody else.
Well, there's wisdom in things that take you down bad paths, right? So, I mean, alcohol is a gateway to do terrible things, right? You lose inhibitions. A lot of people, they commit domestic violence, lots of murders. People drive cars and hurt other people. So it's not about the sin of the alcohol itself. It's just where the path where it sends you, and what you may be doing under the influence. That's kind of my take, where it comes there. I mean, of the three of us, I am, anyone who's watched the show knows that I'm probably the least Christian of the three of us here, and easily I drink the least. But does that make me more righteous than my two colleagues here? I don't think so.
If anything, it might make you less, because
it might be because I don't indulge in all the gladness that I could be in the gift that God gave me.
As I quipped before the show, or maybe during the show, Matt might have recorded it, but if you don't have a particular appetite for drinking, you're not really more righteous for not drinking. You're not really tempted to. Me, who has a great thirst for alcohol and all the time, the fact that I'm not drunk right now means I'm probably more righteous than anybody you've met, because it took more,
at least in this moment, until the cameras are off. Well, so in all seriousness, it reminds me of I think it's Jordan Peterson. I don't know if he came up with the phrase, but he's been quoted as saying this a lot, that a good man is a violent man who chooses not to be violent. But if you're not capable of violence, that doesn't make you a good man. It just makes you ineffectual. Right.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of the point that we're talking about
it
here, right? Is like, if you don't have the desire to drink and you're like, I don't drink, it's like, well, yeah, because you're not into it. It's like, my wife will, complain about dietary problems being a woman and, dieting, trying to lose weight, whatever. I don't have a sweet tooth. So if there's cakes and pies and things out, I don't eat them. Like, it's just not a thing for me. I'm a salty guy. I'm into savories, not sweets. Right. So when I don't crush a apple pie, it's not a big deal. But if there's, chips and salsa out, like, I'm going to munch them all until my stomach hurts from all the salsa. In fact, like last night, we went to my sister-in-law's birthday, Alyssa, Andrew's wife. It was her birthday last night. We went to this new Korean restaurant in town, and I ate so much spicy Korean food. I couldn't even sleep last night. Like, I'm like tossing and turning in bed. So like, I overdid it. Wasn't sugar though,
Right.
but I still overdid it. Dre, to your point, Ephesians 5:18 is the verse that specific. What it says is, "Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." Right? I think I did a Google. I just did a search in the word drunk, and it shows up 64 times in the Bible, give or take, depending on the translation. Right? And that turns into drunkenness, and past tense of drink. Have drunk. But most of these refer to somebody stumbling around, a drunkard, right? Being useless, being a dredge of society. I think the impression or the intent that the Bible's trying to make is twofold. One, when you drink, you're more apt to make bad decisions if you drink too much. And if you drink too much too often, it will control your life and or adversely impact your life, maybe make you unable to hold down a job, unable to take care of your family, unable to defend your family, unable to
That defense thing is probably pretty big, especially back then.
back
Right?
then, right?
So
It's the wild west.
people just
right?
came and just took your family.
Yeah.
And
So
if you can't fight because
Well-
you're drunk, well,
Sorry, didn't mean it.
but I think there's more to that. My read is, things, vices, smoking. And first of all, I don't even know how smoking became part of this conversation. Like, I grew up in the, Dre's wearing the Gen X shirt. We're all Gen Xers here. I certainly grew up hearing in church all the time preachers say, "I don't smoke, drink, or chew, or go with the girls that do." That was a very common phrase to hear coming out of Southern Baptist pastors.
Delani introduced me to the phrase, "If they smoke, they poke."
I was just thinking of that.
So that girl's a slut. Definitely.
I used to say that all the time. Like,
If they smoke, they poke.
anytime we went somewhere and you saw like a girl who was smoking, you're like, "Hey, Brian, go after her."
You get
you
lucky
say
today
that.
because she's hooking up a cigarette.
But-
she's burning a heater.
But I always thought it was funny because the preachers would say that, but you could literally see the men walking from their cars smoking cigarettes as they're getting across the parking lot. But they would park at the far end of the parking lot so they could walk the whole parking lot and finish half a cigarette before they went inside. And you could smell it on people, right?
Yeah.
You walk around in church, half the men smelled like cigarette smoke. So I always thought it was weird that was such a cultural thing and don't get me wrong. I mean, I think, giving yourself lung cancer or emphysema or COPD or whatever is probably not, the most holy thing. I think we've touched on in this show before about, how taking care of your body is as much part of your responsibilities to God and you treating your body as a temple, etc. So anything you do that's not perfect is probably suboptimal.
I mean, we take risks all the time, right? So people smoke or smoke cigars because they enjoy it. It relaxes them. It gets them into a zone where maybe they can write or they can think or contemplate or meditate. But if your reason that it's a sin is because it's risky, well then, I mean, Matt skydove and his leg doesn't work the same today. But I mean, there's people that go hiking, or hell, our occupation is not the safest thing.
It's kind of dangerous.
It's what we do. So to me, like, just because you should do your best to mitigate risks, but just something that's risky is not inherently a sin. Otherwise, everything we do would be a sin, and this world would be like no fun, like comedy.
Yeah, and everybody dies. Can't
Right.
stop it. But I think that does kind of point to that there must be a more fundamental principle at work for why drunkenness is sinful, than that it's bad for you. And I think it's a point that's often lost on us today, because we treat it like a disease. We actually classify alcoholism as a disease as we do so many other sins, or it's either a disease that you're born with and it's not your fault, it's something that just happened to you, so how can God hold you responsible? Or it's, some other immutable characteristics that's just genetic. But I think
Nice knowing you, YouTube. Thank you.
Yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, I wasn't going there, but I
It
suppose
doesn't
that would
matter.
be
Go
included.
ahead, man. Go ahead.
But
I'm being silly.
all sin is a failure of faith. And addressing that, of course, in my own case, who I've, struggled with drinking too much, what is, somebody might read that and be inclined to think, well, if I was drunk one time too many, God's going to cut you off and you're disqualified from here on out. And I don't think that's the takeaway any more than any of the other warnings in Scripture. It's not. I think the teaching of Scripture is that if your life is characterized by drunkenness, i.e., you are a drunkard, it's because you're looking to that as an escape from your problems, where faith in God should lead you in another direction. I don't mean just, hey, if you feel like drinking, pray and God's going to take it away, but it's typically because you're self-medicating, you're coping with things in a way that a healthy, growing, mature faith should lead you to better ways to overcome that. Giving into drunkenness is basically, in a way, it is turning away from God. You're not trusting Him to for whatever that is that you're self-medicating over. So
I think that's an interesting point.
It is.
And there's a lot of vices. There's a lot of addiction. I think. I mean, obviously, none of us are, certified psychiatrists or whatever. But anecdotally,
and in the interest of full disclosure, I don't put a lot of stock in that anyway. But you guys might. But
well, what I was going to say is, there's anecdotally, I would say that my experience is more often than not, people that have addiction issues have unresolved trauma or something that happened in their past that they're still struggling with, that they haven't fully resolved and worked out. And they look to this addiction, whether it's gambling or pornography or alcohol or drugs or shopping or sex or whatever that addiction might be, and they're looking to fill something, which is an interesting theory. That's my theory. Like, I don't know if anybody agrees with it. I'm curious what the listeners think. It's certainly been my experience of looking and watching people around me, right? Which is funny because I would argue that I have an absolutely unaddictive personality, but according to everybody I know, I'm all kinds of broken and damaged and have all kinds of unresolved things that I haven't dealt with, and I don't know what they are, but whatever.
Sounds like you're coping, man.
Right? Like I'm just living La Vida Loca, baby.
That makes me think of it. I wish I could remember the specifics of it. Maybe somebody can hear some of the clues and Google it if you're interested. But there was a research firm that tracked people who had come back from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam. While they were overseas, they were abusing various substances, alcohol, opium, heroin, whatever. And it was just kind of the way of life. Generally, the people who came back and they had families to come back to and careers and responsibilities, they had something else to kind of occupy give their life meaning. They weren't hooked. They did the drugs overseas because it was just a way to deal with it
was a season of their life, and they just, that was what they were doing. Yeah. And
then they put it down and there was no urge to go back to it. Other people who didn't have that going for them, they didn't have that sense of purpose and meaning, they found themselves addicted. It was a lifelong addiction they couldn't shake. You know, and going back.
Oh, go ahead.
Going back to what you mentioned, well, you brought up licensed psychologists and therapists and stuff, and I interjected that I don't place a lot of stock in that, which is both, you know, listeners, if you do, feel free to ignore what I'm saying, but I think a lot of the way that we deal with addiction, medicalizing it, it's kind of the way we medicalize everything else about the human condition. Previously, in the early 20th century, we largely dealt with life through kind of a moral, spiritual paradigm. Like certain things were wrong, and there was a shame culture attached to being a drunk, or to being addicted, or to abusing, or to being a glutton, or whatever else it was, whatever people were addicted to. It was seen as a character issue, along with lots of other things that we now medicalize. We've since gone to a biomedical model, and we don't think in terms of sin and righteousness and right and wrong and morality so much as we do, you know, medical issues. We treat it as a psychological issue to be treated by doctors. And given that, you know, the state of mental health in our country, that people are reporting higher than ever rates of anxiety and depression and all these other things with regard as mental illnesses, our system isn't working. It seems like the moral spiritual paradigm was far better for regulating human behavior. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that, and you can give it as much weight as you deem it merits.
You know, thinking back when you mentioned about the mental gymnastics that people go through on why they should or shouldn't do something,
Yeah.
and then kind of the moral implication that we have in our churches. I know a particular state north of me that's pretty, you know, they're pretty religious up there, but they also lead the nation in antidepressants. So it's interesting to me, like, they don't drink coffee, they don't drink alcohol,
but they take Xanax like they're
but
Pez.
but they yeah. So what is addiction, and what is not, and then why is it okay because a doctor is trying to make you feel a certain way or not feel a certain way? It always found it interesting that, you know, we would jump out of our way to say, hey, you're sinning because you're drinking beer or chewing tobacco, but it's okay that I take all these pills because it makes me a better mommy.
Actually, you know what? I just had an absolute thought.
Okay.
I didn't. This wasn't a note that I had.
In real time.
Yeah, this is fast prototyping here.
I thought I saw a light bulb go
I
off.
would love to see a study that did a correlation between caffeine consumption and either anti-anxiety or psychotropic medication.
Probably
Something
exists.
tells me that they're inverse from one another.
Like if you drink coffee, you're less anxious, or
No,
more
you're less
anxious?
likely to be on anti-anxiety medication.
I don't know. Interesting. I mean,
I'm doing the math in my head of my circles and who I know, and the people that I know that take them don't drink nearly the level of caffeine that those that don't. I'm not going to name names because this is
Sure.
it's a public.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start diving people out, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, and specifically the vets that I know that are massive caffeine consumers are the ones that just walk around angry, but they're not anxious and taking anti-anxiety pills. I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm just saying I think
you just listed the entire United States Marine Corps. Like that's what we do, right?
How many Marines are on the drugs versus not, like, and of those,
Right.
but I mean, how many are more healthy now, right? Like how many are trying to be off of, they're not walking around drinking Monsters and a pot of coffee a day and that kind of stuff.
With 7 Zins in their face.
I'm just saying, I'm curious. Like there's, it begs the, we need MJ to go do some research for us.
You know what? I mean, even healthy people get addicted. Like the whole gym culture, right? And body dysmorphia is a real thing. I mean, I've lived it. You
Mhm.
know, looked pretty good, but I didn't believe so. And I must get stronger. I must get, better. In fact, I don't even drink coffee. I don't drink coffee. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't usually drink alcohol, but I drink the fuck out of some
Pre-workout.
pre-workout, right? So
You
which
don't
is
still do that, do
which
you?
is way stronger than coffee. Um, and then as
And it's
my
got a little bit more than just caffeine in it too,
right,
with all
and
your
as you know,
alanine and all that.
as my eating habits and my age got even bigger, and I wanted to remember what it was like to be lean and mean, I even took a substance called clenbuterol. And clenbuterol is basically a substance that helps you cut. Um, I took a double dose of that because I just got back off of
That's what you do.
vacation. I ate a lot, and then because I took a double dose of that, I also took my pre-workout because I was going to the gym that morning. And it caused me to have a stroke. So like my brain popped just from really vanity purposes,
Don't do
right? Like
don't do drugs, kids.
don't do drugs. So, I probably lost a good 2 years of real cognition. Um, I still don't have my full neurological functions on my right side. I walk with a limp. I only bench 315. I know it sucks. I'm just a fucking mortal now. So,
Yeah. I'm,
things
I'm,
of that nature.
I'm
So
surprised you said that. You put that out to the public.
I know that everyone knows that I can only bench 315, and I'm sorry for anyone who used to be a fan. They might be disappointed, today. And I say that because it's about the path. It's about what leads you away from God. Me believing in myself and these substances, and not what I could have been doing. So it doesn't matter if it's alcohol or cigarettes or sex. It's you need to know where your line is. And if you don't know where your line is, maybe you should listen to others who are kind of putting that line in front. It doesn't mean you listen to every single piece of advice, but definitely take it in. Um, cautionary tale. I could
And
have died,
yeah,
right?
and that does raise another issue of
It wasn't like I was doing heroin.
yeah,
It wasn't like I'm smoked out every day. It wasn't like I was doing lines of coke and had some bad fentanyl in there.
there are a lot of bodybuilders who like are dying young because
Oh, for
they're
sure.
Most.
and it's
Yeah. I saw an interview with Mr. Olympia. Was it Dorian? Doesn't matter, but basically he said, "Hey, you know, aren't you doing this for the health? Like, lady, we're not doing this for health. We're doing it to win,
it is
to be
it's
ginormous, to be
it's
the
really not
biggest."
healthy.
Yeah,
Like
it's
the
not.
human
It's not healthy at all.
body
Like,
Super
what's
not
healthy about
healthy.
a
it,
dude that looks like that? Looks like a cartoon, like he was drawn.
and
I
if
mean,
and the people who the people who are old bodybuilders, I mean Arnold Schwarzenegger is kind of the exception because he found other outlets besides just bodybuilding. Like
he also had
um
2 heart attacks.
did he?
Mhm.
Yeah,
When was that?
he's been when he was like in his 40s. So I
Huh.
mean, my man's been on his deathbed a couple of times, and
I
he
didn't know that.
I would not say
Um
that he looks great today.
but Ronnie Coleman is just
It's a
broken.
train wreck. Yeah.
I mean, he's a big chunk of muscle, but he's barely ambulatory.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
He
he
says
still
he's in
has,
pain constantly too. And that's
yeah.
heartbreaking. But he also, God bless him, says he would never take a second of it back. His regret is not going for a second rep of 800 when he squatted it.
it's absurd.
That's the
But
coolest
yeah,
quote ever. And he said it more than once. But yeah, I mean, none of those guys age well. I mean, Lee Priest might be the best looking of the past generation of bodybuilders who's still in shape and seems to be doing okay.
Jay Cutler looks great.
Cutler, I'm sorry, Cutler.
Yeah,
Cutler looks better than
yeah.
Priest. That's right.
I think Lavroni, he looks pretty good.
But he cycled down and back up.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think Cutler ever took any real time off. I think
I mean,
he's kind of
he
stayed that way for the whole.
probably, yeah, right. So I mean, it's a lifestyle, and
Yeah, but
But then you see some of those other guys and you see them today and they're like 180 pounds, and you're
wild,
like,
right?
whoa, you're like a normal looking person. It's,
I mean, it's like that with, lots of sports too, like the NFL. I
Mhm.
mean, you watch guys that are big, gigantic, 300-pound linemen, and then they retire and they get on TV, like Jeff Saturday. Like he just looks like a normal dude in
Yeah.
a normal
Howie
suit.
Long
Right.
does not
Just-
look like the just absolute terror that he was back in the day.
so-
Hmm.
yeah, take care of yourself, man. Yeah.
You know, one thing I want to point out that I think is interesting, just to kind of bring it back around to the wine thing. I mean, I think we kind of beat that to death, but we made the joke about teetotalers, but Mr. Welch was actually a teetotaler, and he's on record as he created the Welch's company, and the grape juice, the fermentation process was specifically to stop using real wine in communion. Like that was the reason that the company was created. And I find that fascinating.
For reals.
Yeah, I mean, well, for what it's worth,
I-
I'm reading the Wikipedia entry, right? But it's
I think I
under
knew
the
that.
history, right? And it says the company was founded in New Jersey, 1869, by teetotal dentist Dr. Thomas Branwell Welch, sorry. And then it says a little bit further down, Welch was an adherent to the Wesleyan Methodist connection, which strongly opposed manufacturing, buying, selling, or using intoxicating liquors, and advanced the use of unfermented grape juice instead of wine for administering communion during church service.
Hmm.
And there's a footnote reference from an article in Entrepreneur Magazine, Encyclopedia of Entrepreneurs. So I know people that don't like Wikipedia, there's a reference there. It's not just an entry. But yeah, I mean, it's not a joke of, what did they do before Welch's? They drink wine. That's what they did.
Mr. Welch said, "You know what? We can't be doing that
For
We can't be-
thousands of years since the Last Supper, Christians drink wine at communion. And then good old Mr. Welch, he'd had enough.
As a
Tommy.
side note, and perhaps a topic for a future podcast, I think we do communion all wrong.
Sure.
We could get into that if
So are there tiers and levels of substances and abuses? I mean, Matt's probably the most libertarian of us here, right? And we've had many discussions on drugs and should they be legal, and would it end some of the woes we have if drugs were just legal? But usually my question is like, by making a bunch of drugs legal, is that good for society, or is it
so
not?
so I think there's a couple of different questions and there's a couple of different answers. Is it good for society? I don't know. Would it be good for people relative to the church? That's a different conversation. That's a different
Yes.
question, right? And my libertarianism, while it extends to my concept of free will, I don't know that it extends to adherence to biblical direction and in God's direction, God's word, right? So let's be clear
Wisdom,
about that,
straight up,
right? Like there are rules that aren't meant to be broken. So my libertarianism doesn't overstep that. I don't think that you could say in a vacuum that this is the tiering of things that you should or shouldn't do. I think the question is, what is the effect on the individual, and how adversely does it affect that individual's ability to be either a normal person or a Christian? I think that's the conversation. And that's why it's not even really a realistic thing to say no one should drink or everyone should drink. I think if a person is predisposed to intense alcoholism, and they're the kind of person that if they have one drink, they're going to have 100 and you're not going to see them for a week, I think that person should probably never drink, right? Like, I don't think that's a conversation point. I think that's just the reality. I think it also matters what kind of a drunk are you? Because a drunk that gets into fights with everybody, a drunk that's going to put hands on his wife, a drunk that's going to hurt his kids, a drunk that's going to drive drunk and kill people, a drunk that's going to miss work tomorrow, right? That's a different drunk than the drunk that's going to walk around grabbing everybody going, "I love you, man. You want to hear a joke?" Like there's a big difference in those two drunks. And I think then the alcohol is different for those two people. So it's not a one for everybody. I think
So,
this is where you have to know yourself, and you have to be honest about who you are and how you respond to the thing that you're going to do and where it puts you. What kind of state of mind does it put you in?
I don't know. I think just from observations from, just America itself, when everybody smoked and drank, America put men on the moon. America built skyscrapers. America, right? Like these are the things
They were
that we
literally all
accomplished.
smoking in mission control while they
Yes,
were
right. I mean, because nicotine it brings out, that creative in you. Now with everybody smoking marijuana, you walk onto a street in any city, name the city, and it's fucking The Walking Dead, right? It's zombie time. So I think
But you think that's the marijuana? I think the marijuana making him that
it's
zombified.
I don't know.
I
Oh, okay. So
it sounds like
so let's go up a tier, right?
it sounds like your question was one of legality, though. Like
It could be,
brought up
but
libertarianism, so I
uh,
thought you were asking
I'm,
about.
I'm just
And,
society, what's good and what's
and I
not.
and I
So
would
that's so
contend.
to me, it's more moral to have a society that is productive than it is to have a society that's not. So if you're doing heroin as a society and it's legal and everything's fun and go ahead and do your thing, or alcohol, people are like, well, alcohol actually causes more than I don't care. We were productive when it came to alcohol and cigarettes, right? And then when we start adding in all these other things, and people are like, well, we got to stop the war on drugs because no, people are walking around like fucking zombies.
That was the weirdest pro tobacco speech I've ever heard in my life.
Hey,
And
smoke it up, put a man on the moon. That's
I
what.
would contend that I'm probably more libertarian than Matt is.
Wow. We might have to. This might be a topic for another. I am not. I'm pro government. I'm commie. That's compared to you two.
And so, like, I think it's a matter like asking me what I think people should do is a very different question than what do I think should be allowed by law. I don't think it's the government's job to protect us from ourselves.
Well, I don't. I think. I just want to direct the question, Brian. I think Dre was asking a legalistic question from a biblical point of view, not from an American legal point of view. Dre, is that accurate, or were you asking?
It is. From a moral point of view.
Well, coming at it from what should the government allow versus what should churches teach and encourage, those are two very different questions for me.
Me too. I mean,
and I used to, well, I don't know, maybe Matt's a little more libertarian than I am in some ways, but I used to staunchly believe that marijuana should be legalized across the board. My niece, who worked in a marijuana dispensary, got me some a chocolate edible for my birthday one year, a few years ago, and that was the only time I'd ever had that. And well, my reasoning was that, how is this any different than smoking a cigar or having some alcohol? I mean, it's a plant that grows,
which is our conversation today, right?
What's wrong with partaking it? Having partaken of it, it was an ordeal. It was one of the weirdest, darkest 36 hours of my life.
36 hours?
I took the recommended dosage, which was like 1 square.
Really? 36 hours?
It was, yeah.
Holy crap.
You should do it more. You might become enlightened. You should
hang out
with you should hang out with Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers and do some ayahuasca in Peru.
It occurred to me, like, of course in the experience, but also afterwards on reflection, that like the way that people use marijuana up until relatively recently, it was what's called an entheogen. It's like a sacred substance that people used sparingly to initiate these mystical experiences. it wasn't used recreationally, like by a bunch of dumb kids after school to unwind. It was used, ritualistically. I think old people, if you're retired and you want to be stoned all day, I think that should be your right as an adult. I think it makes you stupid if you're a kid. But it was such a intense experience. Like I could kind of understand how a lot of ancient mystics came to their conclusions. I think if I hadn't thought so much about religious questions and existential philosophical questions before I'd had the experience, like just through the course of my life, I think it would have had a permanent deleterious effect on my outlook. I don't know if it would have like warped my neurology or like permanently like brain damage me, but I think the experience of it would have made me believe things about the universe that are it's contrary to my convictions and beliefs. But I can get into that if you want. I don't know how interesting that is. And
I don't know
Matt.
about for this show, but I want to sneak some more edible into you and watch it happen now. That's like
I think it's interesting that this line, this weird arbitrarily that you just, if you're old, just do it. If you're young, you're an idiot. Like what does that mean? Like where's that line? Being retired? That's the line that we're kind of putting out there.
Well, I think if you're young and your life is full of potential, and then it's shown to make it. It's been scientifically proven that it makes you stupid. It affects your cognitive ability.
It's really bad for super young people, like teenagers. It like messes up the development. Like
you are not going to go as far in life if that's a habit that you get into. If you're old, if you've already had your career, if you're not, what are you saving yourself for? What do you like? And if you're, if
you got all these brain cells, what are you gonna do with them?
Yeah,
you can't take them with you when you go.
Go nuts. And it's got medicinal value. It does help with a lot of things that happen to you when you get old. So, and I think that's what it's for. I think that's why God gave man marijuana. But using it the way that we use it, I think we've kind of missed the point, much like we do everything else.
But I think we should be what I mean, there's a whole different line there. Should we be using alcohol in that way? Should we be sitting around in like a village circle, just getting blasted, having philosophical conversations instead of chilling watching football games?
I think if we had more village circles having philosophical conversations, we would be less dependent on alcohol and other substances.
I think when you and I watch football, Matt, we do have philosophical conversations.
That's true.
I mean,
and that's kind of what we do anyway. I don't partake of the football, but
it has a deleterious effect on your cognitive ability.
Well, you're talking about alcohol. I was
talking about football. No, I was talking about football. I was trying to be funny. I was just throwing back to your like.
Okay, sorry.
Overly stated reaction to your edible.
It was not overly stated. It was not overly stated.
Not. I want to try it now. I've never.
Right.
You know how like when you hear about. So I had tried it several times earlier in my life. Just like I'm at a party, someone's passing it around, and you smoke it. It had no effect on me. Like I knew it was getting in because I got the munchies, but whatever everybody else was experiencing that made them want to keep doing that was not happening to me. So but the liver processes it differently. It when you eat it, it processes through your liver instead of your lungs, and it
might have gotten something else too. Like
that's what it sounds like.
Your relative is like
you might have got some shrooms or something in there.
You're tripping balls. 36 hours.
I mean, I have heard of other people their first time doing it being like over, and they have to figure out like you break it into pieces and you have to build up to it or whatever. I have heard of that. I don't know.
And I did try it again in a much smaller dose, but it still wasn't whatever everybody else is getting out of that.
It wasn't fun.
I don't know how that's addictive. Like
Yeah.
even
This
when
is
it
me
wasn't.
judging you, judging, judgment.
I would
I'm
say
so righteous.
Judgy McJudge face.
well,
I mean, I've done plenty of other stuff.
No, I'm
but
fascinated. Like this stuff is interesting to me. I've done a lot of reading and talking to people about like microdosing mushrooms.
Sure.
That's something that seems to be a really up and coming kind of concept. I know a guy I used to work with that is like, he lives up in Colorado and grows them. And like, this is a thing of his part of his life now. And the way he described it is, he goes, you know how like on a normal Monday, you're kind of stressed, Wednesday, you're worn out and mentally exhausted, and by Friday, you need the weekend and this and that. He goes, and you go on a really long vacation. And when you're coming back to work, you're actually kind of looking forward to work and kind of all the stress is gone and you're ready to go at it. He goes, if you microdose, that's what you feel like every day of your life. And I was like, word?
yeah,
But like
I wouldn't.
he went on some like retreat where like they have a bunch of like Sherpas that do this for a living, and they like have you try a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one. They like watch you and like weigh you and like do all this stuff to like get you just dialed in
They
perfectly.
weigh you.
Well, they're trying to make sure you don't overdo it, because the
You're
goal
right.
is not to trip balls.
I know,
It's
like
just
you mean evaluate. I'm thinking like they give you some shrooms and they put you on a scale.
I
to
think
see
I
what
think they do. I
balance.
think they're like
Well,
slivering
yeah, but
like
I think a
and-
different dose for me than my wife would probably
Right.
make sense because
But
I'm way
but
bigger than her.
he literally went to like this retreat to learn how to do it. And the part of it is every person's unique in your metabolism and your digestive system and whatever. And then he like figured it out. Now he's like all into it, and it's just a way of life for him. But he's not like stoned at any level when you talk to him, kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway,
There's still the idea of like becoming dependent on that just for your day-to-day existence.
I
That's
mean,
the part that worries me.
I hear you, but I would ask the immediate question: what's different between needing a couple of cups of coffee to get through the day?
I don't need a cup of coffee.
I didn't
to
say
get through the
you.
day.
I'm just saying in general, right? Like there's the vast majority of working America that if you told them they couldn't have coffee for a week, there would be a riot, right?
Yeah.
Like people talk about, I haven't had my coffee yet. Don't talk to me, like it's certainly a thing. Sugar is probably the most
you kidding me?
addicted drug in America.
Calories. If you told me I can only consume 1,500 calories, I would live just fine. I would be mad because I'd be hungry.
So my point is just, like for those that don't know, Brian and I both live in Oklahoma, and we recently passed medicinal marijuana, which is tantamount to recreational marijuana because the ability to get a card is laughable. Carrie and I had a long conversation because she was 100% against the idea, and the election was coming up, so we were talking about it. And I just posited the question. I'm like, why is it that we as a society have no problem with opioids, synthetic, pain meds, and all of these things, but yet, to Brian's point, something that grows in the ground natively, we didn't cultivate it even. We've demonized it because of, some secondary effect. And that's just the start of my libertarianism, right? When it comes to these things, it's like, no one says, if you came to work and we're like, yeah, man, I had, oral surgery, I had a tooth pulled, taking these Percocets, nobody's gonna be like, what? You're taking Percocet? How dare you? But if you were to say, yeah, man, I've got this back pain, man, so I was smoking some weed last night, people would be like, what's wrong with you, freaking pothead?
We live in this crazy world of credentialism, right? The expert told me that the opioid is better for me, and
Right.
and this other expert who I elected tells me that this thing is not
Yeah,
good
Dr.
for me.
Fauci said it was okay.
Yeah,
So-
and we have a corporate class that has flooded the advertising airwaves with a message.
Yep.
And so we accept that, the addictions that our doctors prescribe for us, those are acceptable, but the addictions that we can grow ourselves and nobody can make any money off of, well, that's going to be criminalized. So, but
Yeah.
you know,
So
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I mean, to sum up my own position on this, I'm still pretty libertarian about it. I think people should live their lives however they want. We don't have the kind of government system that allows that. So I think in a perfect world, people would be able to, in a more perfect world at least, people would, if you want to do heroin or meth or weed or whatever, you do that. That's your life. The government has no principled right to tell you you can't do that. But at the same time, the consequences for living your life that way are your own. Society doesn't owe it to you to give you a welfare check or put a roof over your head or food on your plate because you've rendered yourself incapable of working.
In the moment you hurt someone under that state, or the moment you neglect a, heaven forbid, child, in that state, because you'd rather have a fix than take care of your toddler, then those consequences need to be severe.
I
Yeah.
100% agree. And just to be clear, for anybody that's never heard me talk about my libertarian views, I 100% agree with those statements, right? Like, your ability to do things shouldn't be limited by the government, but the punishments for doing things that are but stupid should be very, very, very severe.
Absolutely.
And so, the point is, make good decisions. That's really what it comes down to. And I think that really sums up the same point that we kind of started the show with from a biblical point of view with regards to what one should or shouldn't do. I think the same base concepts apply, right? Can you drink? Of course you can. Should you be drunk? Probably not. Should you be drunk all the time? Absolutely not, right? Like, there's no value there. You're not serving any higher ability if you're incapacitated or addled, right? But having a beer, right? Like, I had a tall glass of wine earlier while I was cooking we had steaks for dinner. Alyssa and her boyfriend were over, so I had a little family dinner. And had a bottle of wine split between three of us. So three of us split a bottle of wine. Pretty sure that's not excessive, right? And I grabbed a Modelo on my way in here to sit down and do the show, as much for the purposes of this episode as anything else. But because I was out of wine, because we drank all the wine that was in that bottle. But I'm clearly not inebriated right now, and if I needed to go jump in the car and go drive, I guarantee I'm well within the legal limit. 2 drinks in the last, I had dinner at 6, 2 drinks in 3 hours, right? Like, that's not a problem.
Sinner.
The reality is, if I got in my car, I'm going to speed anyway, so I'm going to break the law when I get in the car. But it's not because of the alcohol. I always drive fast.
It's because of Satan.
Because Satan, I drive fast.
Yes, that's why.
I do drive fast.
I don't, man. I'm boring. I like drive slow in my little sedan, listening to old music,
listening to show tunes.
I got
it's been a while. It's been a minute since I've listened to show tunes, but yeah, I mean,
I got a GT Mustang last year, and just feels wrong not to speed in it.
I won't drive Delani's car because it's too fast. It makes me want to speed.
What does she drive?
Mini Cooper S model. It gets on down the road. Plus, I don't fit in it, so I got to put the top down. I'm like Mr. Incredible driving the Mini Cooper.
So yeah, but I think that's. I mean, it sounds like we're all kind of largely in agreement on this topic. I think it's odd. It's curious. Is my final takeaway, the way in which certain denominations, and I say that because obviously, Catholics are sitting. If there's anybody's Catholic listening to our show, they're like, "The hell cares if you drink? Like, we drink all the time." So I think there's probably some interesting differences there. I'm not aware of any Protestant denomination that openly endorses drinking. Some are more teetotalist than others.
Most Presbyterians, I don't think I know a Presbyterian that doesn't drink scotch.
Really?
and that had nothing to
Interesting.
do with it. It's the Scottish Church, but just a coincidence. But some even brew their own beer. But yeah,
Interesting.
Presbyterians love their whiskey.
I don't know that I've ever met a Presbyterian.
You've met Presbyterians. I guarantee you've met Presbyterians. They're all over the place in Oklahoma.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
They
walk
Looking at
among
them.
us.
I'm looking at
They
them.
walk
They're-
I see presbyters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about Presbyterians, Trey?
I don't have anything to say about Presbyterians. I don't openly know any. I may know some, but I don't know that I know them. They're
I've
just hiding
only
in,
I've
they're
only
hiding in
known
plain sight.
I've known
So-
Episcopalian, but I don't know that I've ever known a Presbyterian.
Yeah, those are. I guess they're not so different, but
I've never met a Seventh-day Adventer either.
It's so adventure. It's so curious, this topic, how deeply personal it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and a lot of people have strong emotions about it, right?
They do. This is one of those topics that you can't tend to have an adult conversation around amongst Protestant Christians.
Right. They're and people are just locked in ways too. And I grew up that way. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's where we are. I don't
I-
want to sin. I don't want to be tempted by the devil.
So I have
and his juice and lettuce.
I have a quick story about this, not about drinking specifically, but about some of these customs. So my mom was raised Southern Baptist as well as I was, which pretty much made me a Southern Baptist. But we were talking about dancing. I think I maybe had watched Footloose recently. I was older, I wasn't a kid. And I was kind of asking her, like, where did this come from? Because clearly, David danced. Like, dancing occurred in the Bible. So where did this Protestant, aversion to dancing come from? And she was like, well, I can tell you my take. And I'm like, okay. And she said that to her understanding, it happened in her lifetime. So when she was born, basically. So essentially, there was no problem with dancing in the early 1900s. And it was during the World War period that GIs were coming home on R&R, and they were going to USO dances, and they would bring in the local girls to dance with the GIs, and the GIs would leave, and the girls would suddenly have become pregnant after the GIs left. And so they kind of put two and two together, and they were like, well, how do we keep this from happening? They're like, no more dances.
Dancing,
right?
makes babies.
Dancing makes you pregnant.
And clearly
That
it
happens.
wasn't the dancing, but it was, the event of the
Are you
dance
sure?
It's a
that
gateway.
caused them to be able to, sneak
Dance.
off around the corner and dance a little dirtier.
Listen, I saw 1988's film starring Patrick Swayze and
And you got pregnant?
Jennifer Grey, and everybody got pregnant. Like, I don't know.
But that was her theory. She was like, I don't think there was a problem with it, religiously up until that point. And so they just decided this was a bad idea, but it was the church people that were enforcing the rule. And then somewhere the story just got lost, and they lost the, and it's as believable as anything. As far as the hows
I think
and the
that story
whys.
is the same thing with alcohol. I think it's the same thing. I think that, like, all of a sudden people weren't showing up to church on Sundays because they were fucking hammered from Saturday. And then the church, like, enough of that crap. Like, this is leading us down a dark path. No more drinking.
It does raise interesting questions about how many things that we think of as Christian that are totally from outside the Bible, but
Mhm.
they just kind of get turned into institutions over time, and then people can't conceive of Christianity apart from that, and they do not care that it's either not in the Bible or directly contradicted by the Bible. Like, this is what they've
Right.
decided.
We should make a list of things that are that in the comments. What are some things that you do just from religious habit and not necessarily backed up by anything? So we'll make that list, and we'll do an episode on
Yeah, I like
extra stuff that's not biblical. that we just do as Christians?
Extra biblical things.
Actually,
I could start you off.
yeah,
Latin Mass.
Latin Mass.
Uh, uh, not using instruments.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been thinking
Well,
about
don't
that
give
a
it
lot,
away now. We just,
but yeah,
Yeah.
I had a like a big like Schlabberknocker debate with a guy not too long ago, an Eastern Orthodox guy, about why instruments aren't appropriate for worship.
oh wow, cool.
And
And you say they're
Instruments?
not, or he said they're not.
he said they're not.
Okay.
And that's pretty typical of Eastern Orthodox.
Well,
practice.
guitars aren't, because guitars are like dancing.
You shut your whore mouth.
If you play guitar, it's a gateway to other stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, I live near a beach. Pull out a guitar. That's all I'll
Just-
say about that.
It's like a USO dance.
It's just like people just get pregnant. They just end up pregnant. That's what it is. So,
They're either pregnant or they're doing heroin. One of the two.
but, I mean, it's
Sometimes both.
at the same time. Pregnancy heroin. So I think anyone out there who wants to drink, you have permission from the Mount Hermeneutics crew, because we matter, right? Like, so
Just as long as you do
Don't
it,
do weed though.
just do it tastefully. It's
And don't
important
do weed. It makes you stupid unless you're old.
to be tasteful.
to be tasteful. Oh, that's a cute little insider for us. Cat
yeah.
fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think
we did it.
I think
We did.
I think we killed it. Like,
All right.
Yeah.
it's
Don't
fine.
be an
solved.
asshole. That's
Solved
what
alcohol.
That's actually maybe the better answer. Just don't be an asshole about it. Like, of course you can. Just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be a funny way for a preacher to explain it on the pulpit,
Like the golden rule.
right? Like, guys, I need to tell you all this. This has been on my heart lately. I've had a number of the church membership asking me if it's okay to drink, and I prayed on it. The answer is you can drink. Just don't be an asshole.
I would go there.
It's
I
like
would-
a
I would
liberty.
go.
It's like a liberty briefing.
Right. Don't drink and drive. You might hit a curb and spill your beer.
Yikes.
Don't drink and drive. You do wear a condom. Equal opportunity will not be tolerated. What else?
My daughter's version is don't add to or take away from the population.
Nice.
I'm good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Good final thoughts. Final thoughts, Brian?
That's all of them. I'm all
Cool.
out of thoughts.
Matt, final thoughts?
I think, just to restate, I don't think there's a hierarchy of bad things to do when it comes to drinking, smoking. I think at the end of the day, it's who you are and how it affects you. I think that's really what it comes down to. And you need to know yourself. And that probably goes back even to, old Marine Corps training, right? Know yourself, know your weaknesses.
Sure.
I think, like you said, Dre, you have to go down that path a little bit to understand who you are, right? You've got to make a few bad decisions. I think that was also a Jordan Peterson thing. He talked about doing dangerous things safely or something like that. He's talking about
Sure.
raising kids and letting them, make dangerous
yeah.
mistakes safely. I think that's an important part of growing up as a young man, young woman, young adult. I think you need to make a few safe, bad decisions so you can figure out what to do. And then once you figure it out, stop being an idiot and doubling down on those bad decisions, right? And then go forward and live a better life.
I changed my mind. I have thoughts.
Go ahead.
Overindulgence in any substance is of the flesh. Live in the spirit. Following the flesh leads to death. Live in the spirit, and you don't appease to the desires of the flesh. You have to master your appetites. If you are not mastering your appetites, you're not living in the spirit. If you're not living in the spirit, you should. Are you in Christ? Are you a Christian?
Do you even worship, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
that's-
like it. I dig it.
That's the ultimate authority. The ultimate authority is, are you in Christ?
Right.
And everybody else clutching their pearls, they're not the authority. They can give advice, they have wisdom, they have lived, maybe they've been down a path you've been on, they can give you advice about that path. But that's not the authority. The authority comes from God. So, morally, that's where you need to align. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So with that, I will say, Stay curious, stay enlightened, and we will see you next week. God bless.
Hugs and kisses.
It's a damn good show.
Damn good show.